Hi-hat could be the bane of the recordist's life, because if you get somebody wailing away on this thing, man, it's gonna bleed all over the kit. I've got a couple of favorites on hi-hats. This one in particular is the SE Electronics Rupert Neve condenser mic, small diaphragm. I really like it. It's crispy, but still, if you want to get body out of something, it'll be there. It's not just thin and fizzy. It's a huge mic. In fact, during the recording, I had to roll off. I generally do not EQ when I'm recording, but I had to roll off a little bit of low end because this hi-hat sounded like it was a pair of rides. It's like gung gung gung. So I had to take that off. But it's got this nice creamy smooth top end. Another classic one I tend to use a lot is the AKG 451. Again, one of those pencil mics. Occasionally, when you're doing live recordings, for example, if you got the whole band in the room and you need to create a few dead spots because the hi-hat mic's gonna pick up quite a bit of stuff, it might be worth experimenting with a ribbon mic, because a ribbon mic is a figure of 8, so you could position it like that, like the Bayer, I can't remember the exact number,
Bayer Dynamic
160,
yes,
something like that, the little black stick with the silver ball on it.
That's my tool.
You could position it this way, so it's pointing down, it's obviously also pointing up, but that's out of phase, and it's probably, unless you've got a really ambient room, it's not going to pick up that much. But it means that the dead spot, because it's a figure of 8, so if you imagine it 8 like that, it's got this dead spot right here, so it's also going to grab a lot less of what's going on here, because a lot of the time hi-hat mics, you get a lot of snare on it and stuff like that. So it's going to pick up a lot less of this, but it's also going to pick up a lot less of, there might be a guitarist over there and a bass player over there. So it's going to pick up a lot less stuff that goes around on it. And yeah, position wise, again, it depends. My motto with mic placement is, if it doesn't sound right, come back into the live room and move the mic. Don't go for an EQ, don't go for a compressor or a gate. Come in, listen to what it sounds like in the room, and go, right, that mic is wrong, change it. Or that mic's in the wrong position, it might be here, looking right at the snare. So, in this case, I've got it right on the edge, because I like sort of that nice crispy hi-hat, and I've got it pointing a little bit away from everything, so it's good. Obviously the dead spot of the cardioid is about here, so it's going to get less of this cymbal here, and general stuff coming from this area. So yeah, hi-hat. Overheads, well, I've got a bit of a forest going on here. Let's start with general overheads. Various ways of doing it. You can take a couple of pencil mics and have them in the stereo XY position and sort of angle them over the drummer, so you get quite a wide spread. You can go wider still if you use if you sort of make use of more classical microphone techniques like ORTF or NOS. So instead of the coincident pair, you can have them spread out, so that's going to give you a really wide panorama. Might be too wide, there might be too much distance between everything, and a big hole in the middle. So again, it's to taste. The way I've got these guys set up is that they're supplementing something else, which we'll talk about in just a minute. They're ribbons, they're Coles 4038s, so figure of 8, which is good because it'll reject reflections coming off from the side. The way I've got these set up is actually the wrong way around. I've got the negative side looking down here, so I had to flip the phase on the console. The only reason was because I needed that angle. If I wanted that angle on a regular stand, it would be too low, and I would have to come in too high as well, so it'd be awkward. So, but that's the cool thing about a figure of 8, is that it picks up exactly the same on the opposite side, but out of phase. So if you're going to do that, flip the phase, and it behaves like normal. Another cool thing about ribbon mics is that they're a bit more forgiving on high end. So, you know, you've got somebody wailing away on cymbals. If you've got big, open condenser mics, that might be too shrill, might be too washy, very harsh, and then you end up EQing it out. The thing with ribbons is it gives that smooth kind of wash explosion of cymbals. And then to supplement that, I use this sort of old school trick, you know, credited to Glyn Johns, famous for recording the Eagles and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. You can find out all about that. But it's basically one overhead right here over the top. It's 4 feet from the snare. So from the center of the snare, you take a tape measure to where the diaphragm is. It's about 4 feet. And again, you can experiment in the room that you're in. You know, 4 feet might be way too ambient in certain rooms, or still too close in other rooms, so you could go higher. Set to cardioid. Again, you can experiment with that. You know, if you've got a multi-pattern mic, if there's too much resonance coming off the room, you could dial it back. You could turn it into a figure of 8 or a hypercardioid, so you get less of this stuff going on. Or if you want a bit more vibe, you want a bit more reflection, you can make it into a subcardioid, so it's not as dead over here. Or you can go all out and turn it into an omni, and it's just picking up all over the place. And in addition to that, which originally would have been a Neumann 87 or a 67, something like that, there's an identical microphone in a very odd place, and we'll take you there right now. We're going to go off to the side here by the floor tom. Is the identical mic set to the identical polar pattern, and I'm gonna scoot down here. It is the same distance from the center of the snare, so you can make a perfect triangle there. So it's 4 feet to the top and 4 feet to the side, and it's low down overlooking the floor tom, so it's like onto the floor tom looking at the snare. And you know, Glyn confirms that he sort of positioned them like that and it worked. I don't know if it's true or whether he actually thought about this, but you know, it has great face consistency because of the equal distance to what's going on the snare. So in theory and in practice, you could get away with a kick mic and these two. That will give you a really good organic drum sound. So what the hell is this thing? Well, I've been using this as a room mic, not in this exact position. It was over there in the corner where, you know, there's quite a bit of energy building up. But you can play around with it. You can either have it sort of at the back of the room really high, or you could put them by the floor, so you're going to end up with more kick and stuff like that. This crazy thing is an STC 4021, better known as the Ball and Biscuit, because that's what it looks like. It was never really used the way the manufacturer intended it to be used. You can a lot of Beatles fans will have probably seen it hanging from the ceiling at Abbey Road, because they used it as a talkback mic. So it was in the room, so they could hear what the band was saying up to the control room. Or it was sort of stuck on the console, again as a talkback mic to talk back to the artists. I kind of love it as a sort of cranky room mic, but it's omni, and the reason it's omni is if you take this grill off, it's no longer omni. It's kind of a cardioid mic, and this thing, which I think is called the Romanoff shield, basically because of the sphere, the way it picks up is because this shield is there, any sound coming from the back, which would be the dead spot of a cardioid, is reflected back into the mic by the shield. So that's why it's an omni mic. But again, for room mics, you can go crazy. You know, you can put up 2 massive Neumann M50s, or you know, a couple of these Browner VM1s would work well. A lot of people use these Coles overheads as room mics as well, so you can go into like stereo miking where you use 2 ribbons crossed, so you've got one looking left and back and one looking right and back, and that's basically the early stereo mic technique invented by Blumlein, is 2 crossed figure of 8s, so you can do that. And again, just, you know, experiment. It's all that, you know, room mics are going to be room mics. You know, they're not going to sound amazing by themselves, but they will add space to your recording. You know, they'll add the sound of the room. And again, if it's a bad room, you probably won't end up using them. If it's an amazing sounding room, or you're looking for that big warehouse explosion sound, they'll do the job.